David Holmes, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. It's been a long time coming, to be honest.
Absolutely. We're going through some interesting times right now, and auction rates, numbers are down, the market's tight. Why on earth would I want to auction my house?
I would answer that with the question, why on earth wouldn't you want to auction your house?
Nice.
I don't understand. I mean, you've got all the levers, all the mechanisms for urgency, for deadline, for qualified buyers are still there, whether it's a good market, bad market, transitional market, whatever you want to call it. All the reasons are exactly the same.
Yeah.
One's a slightly easier day. The other one might be a harder day, but each scenario gets you closer to a sale.
Okay. So why is there so much negative press around auctions?
Yeah, I think Queensland's a funny one. We've always had this thought around, banks moving in, foreclosure, all those things. I think there's still a bit of a negative stigma from many years ago. If you look at our numbers across Australia, I think last week had about circa 150 auctions in Brisbane. Mm-hmm. If you look at the numbers in Melbourne and Sydney, 700 and about 1,000. So we're still very, very light on. Our auction culture is still very unsophisticated in a way. And I think that's a changing landscape dramatically over the last 20 years, but I think the previous 30 years still shaped, unfortunately, a lot of preconceived ideas. And because we don't take everything to auction, like I grew up in Melbourne, born and bred in Melbourne, if you say to someone, I'm selling my house, people say, when's the auction? They don't ask how much, when's the auction? So it's this kind of natural culture around that's what we do and that's how we do it. Whereas here it's like how much, who you're using, all those sort of things. So it's a very different scenario.
Why is that? Like, what is the reasoning for that? Do you know? What's the history behind that?
No, I mean, I just think it's, I don't understand. I mean, financial institutions, courts of laws, banks have always used the auction process for a fair and equitable outcome, no conditions, no whiskers on the contract.
Yeah.
It actually makes sense. And I think once you do it, but then you look, early on in my career, I chatted to a lot of older auctioneers and they spoke about the times in the early 2000s and through the 90s and 80s where Queensland actually had a lot more auctions. I don't know why we went away from that. Maybe it was tough times when the interest rates were in the high teens, early 20s. Maybe the volumes changed. Certainly the amount of agents we have on the ground has changed as well. So I think those big brands who are driving those really big in-room auction events and those sort of, that sort of landscape, that's changed quite dramatically since.
Yeah, so you believe the auction is the best and fairest place to sell your home in any market?
Put it this way, if I said to you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I've got somebody who can afford to pay for your property today, and I'm going to put them in competition with somebody else who can afford to pay for your property today, would you rather me do that, or would you rather me say, I tell you what, I've got a couple of guys, let's see if they want to buy your property. They're going to need 2 or 3 weeks to see if they can organise their finance, and if they can afford it in 3 weeks' time, then they'll commit. Which one would you work with?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, let's play devil's advocate a bit, because I know there's a lot of agents that watch this show and a lot of up-and-coming agents as well, and they might be a little bit nervous about auctions when they see the press, and they're in a listing presentation, you want to secure the business. And I've been selling for 22 years, and sometimes you sit in front of a seller and they're straight away, well, I don't want to auction my house. Something that comes off straight away, and the agents sort of just flow with that, so maybe let's just do a little bit of a role play there. If you talk it to me as a seller, and I'll say something to you like, I don't like auctions.
Okay. All right.
I just don't want to do an auction.
Where
would you go to from there?
That's cool. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if I was sitting in your position, I wouldn't want to auction my property too. But here's what I know. The benefit of me calling 10,000 auctions has me in a position where I actually understand those levers and the mechanisms that are inbuilt. Nobody wants to sell via auction and nobody really wants to buy via auction. But what you do want is an outcome that has the potential of emotion and competition. If I can get 2 people bidding against each other, there is a chance of a premium outcome. Now, if I put a price on your property, it's always going to have that as a ceiling. Whether you say offers over or, 1.1 million, it's rare that you're going to get 1.2, 1.3. Most people are going to start their bidding a little bit lower, all right? What I don't want to do is I don't want to put a ceiling on the price. I want to give it some blue sky. So if I have 2 people who are really, really motivated, now every buyer's got a different motivation for why they're buying that property. You might be buying it because you like the schools in the area, but I might be buying it because my mum lives next door, she's ill, and I'll pay way overs in order to live there and look after her.
Yeah.
Somebody might be divorcing, someone might need a business in an area. You just don't know what people's motivation, what they're truly willing to pay are. What I don't want to do is I don't want to limit the potential of your property. So I understand that you might not be comfortable with the auction process, but allow me to do that. And this is what I'm going to try to do as an agent. I'm going to get as many offers as I possibly can prior to auction day. They're the emotional cashed up buyers, and they have the opportunity potentially to purchase the property before auction. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody comes along and they give us way over what we'd want, over what we'd hope or expect, let's take that offer because it's done its work. If for whatever reason we don't see the offer that we want prior to auction day, let's put those guys in competition with each other. There's nothing like two men, 3 women standing in the backyard bidding against each other. Most of us like what the rest of us like. And when you've got that social proof, that's where that chance of that outbidding each other and that chance of that potential, premium outcome is there.
Yeah.
So let me do that. If for whatever reason I don't sell on that day, that's 2 phases of the process. I'll know between the offers that came in prior to the auction and the bidding that happened on the day exactly what the market value is, and I can get that done potentially within 7 to 14 days of the auction.
There's obviously not a lot of homes selling right now in the area. It feels like the market's really slow, and you sort of need competition to do an auction, don't you?
Absolutely. So as an agent, what I'd be doing right now is I'd be doing shorter open homes. If you've been doing 45-minute open homes, cut that back to a half an hour. If you're doing half an hour, cut it back to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Because again, most of us like what the rest of us like. If I can drag people into my open homes and they see each other looking at the property, she likes the entertainment, he likes the barbecue area, we start to see that and we start to think that there's other people that like what we like. We get that validation. I'm more likely to want to put forward an offer in on the day. Now, if we've just got a price on that property, we may not actually, have people actually attending. If we get the price wrong, people just won't look.
Yeah.
And the problem is if we don't have a deadline, which is the auction date, people then get distracted by other properties. So there's a lot of properties coming on the market, even though the average days on market are blowing out. People get distracted by the shiny stuff. I did like number 7, but number 14 around the corner's now just come on. I won't look at 7 because I want to look at that one first. All of a sudden, you haven't got that pull towards that. And as more stock comes on, we have less interest in the property. So keep short, sharp campaigns, 2.5 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
Get the people in. People who've got money, they're ready to buy. You get your alerts on REA, you go and have a look at the first open home, then you drag your significant other through the property the next weekend, and then you make a decision about buying it.
Nice. As an agent, I would love for every property to be an auction, to be honest. I think if the whole marketplace was just like start as an auction, it would just make everything so much fairer. It would just make everything much more transparent for everybody as well. The good properties would have competition. If someone, like you say, wanted to avoid auction day, they come in hot beforehand.
Yeah.
But most people, if they're trying to get a deal, they'll turn up on the day and we'll see what happens. You know? Then at least you know what the market's willing to pay. You price it accordingly after.
Yeah.
I like that process, and I think that is a good method right now in the marketplace. There's there's some agents out there that you could say auction to 1,000 times. You could tell them why, and they will still say no. Yeah. They've just got this thing about auctions that they just hate. They go run around, they bag them. They've never done an auction, but they tell everybody how rubbish they are, and they say they don't work. And
you're a failure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there too much emphasis on the auction day?
Absolutely. I mean, the hard work is done in the campaign and the lead up to the auction day. Great agents start the day after the listing presentation's done and the Form 6 is signed. They're working buyers to get them through, working in the neighbourhood to get them coming along. They're working their potential buyer pool, their warm buyer list in order to get them coming along and actually making offers. They're having regular vendor meetings throughout the campaign. I feel like a lot of agents still will just hope that I turn up on the day with a courtesy bus full of buyers. I'm the driver. Get out, call the auction. Here's my buyers, and they haven't done anything. They've listed on
They're
REA.
All from Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah. Listed on REA. The property goes up. The auctioneer is going to be there on the day, and it's all going to just sort of come together. No, the great work's done. Getting those buyers, keeping them on the line all the way through, getting offers. Making sure that their offers are, even if they're not accepted, that they still feel like they're in the mix, still feeling like they've got the potential of buying that property. So. But I think a lot of agents get scared. I remember you coming out of COVID, it was amazing. Like that was, 21, 22 was some of the best auction years I'll ever experience. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
You'd be there, every agent had a new tailor-made suit every week. He was high-fiving you like there was, 200 people in the backyard and 10 bidders. It was easy. I can tell you the last couple of weeks, I don't even know where the agents are. I'm standing up there and it's pretty lonely at the moment. You know what I mean? If I've got one buyer that I'm working with, we've often got more, but you know what I mean? It can get pretty lonely. And so agents have this fear of especially if it goes on social media, what happens? I don't look good because my property hasn't sold. That's framing it up for the vendors too, making sure that, hey guys, I'm running a process. And
Yep.
part of the process may or may not be selling it on the day. But either way, I come out of that with an overwhelming weight of information about what the market thinks, and I'm going to be able to use that information to get it sold very shortly after. Yeah.
I think a seller knows, like, realistically that the market's tough, and sometimes they know they're in a property that might be a little bit harder to sell, and they often know that they want an absolute premium for it too. So I think as an agent, it's good to go in there and, you know, be quite real and open with the market and where it's at, you know, and then, you know, protecting them from, you know, themselves as well. Like, so as an agent, you know, I want to get you as much money as I possibly can, and I believe we can get a good result on this. But what I want to do is I just want to test the market to start. You know, that's how I like to position an auction. Like, let's just put a feel on there. You know, in this next 2-3 weeks, we don't even have to worry about a price. We'll have a look at some comps. We'll give them to buyers, and we'll just see where the numbers come in. Because if it's no price, and you know, the agents they don't give the buyer a number.
Yeah.
They don't give them something to work with. That's really annoying, isn't it? And we're protected in Queensland that we don't have to give out a price on auctions. We can give out the comps.
You say protected, or are we disadvantaged? I don't know.
Oh, you think? Oh, yeah. Let's dive into that. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, potentially. I with my auctions, I usually get the comparisons, and I'll say, well, look, this property's sold around the corner. We think it's an inferior property. It didn't quite have the features that this has. But then this one, like, oh my gosh, like the sellers love that house, and if you know they got a number like that, they'd be able to move. So I sort of give them the range. Yeah. But could you get the range wrong? Like, is that
I think
risky?
people get the range wrong all the time, and I think that's half the problems. You look at the overquoting and underquoting scenario that you've got down south. You know, the potential for that is everywhere, really. But again, you don't know what the motivations of the buyers are. You and I might think that something's worth $1 million. It might sell for $1,350,000. No one saw that coming, so that's a really sort of tricky territory. In Melbourne right now, you've got to declare the reserve, you know, before auction day. That's a whole crazy thing where we can't talk about price at all. So
that seems so dumb.
Yeah. And then everywhere in between, you know, we have as many vendor bids as you like. You know, New South Wales and Canberra, they can only have one vendor bid. You know, so we have this wild, you know, vast tapestry of legislation across Australia that's not the same in any state, and it's quite confusing. I think the compelling things about the Queensland legislation are the fact that we can have conversations without price, and that does protect, I guess, you know, the potential of the upside there if we want it to. Yeah. The downside is that. And at one point, when I had a previous role, I was licensed in 5 states across Australia, flying around calling auctions everywhere. And it's quite confusing. But what I did notice in those areas where they had price ranges is that the buyers who were turning up were qualified. Yep. So if you said, you know, for a 2-beddy in Redfern in Sydney, you know, it's like it was, you know, bidding from 900 to $1 million was the range. The first bid was never $400,000. It was $800, $850, and they were much closer to the range in which they knew it was going to sell. So it got rid of a lot of the tire kickers. It brought in a lot of motivated buyers, and because of that, you know, auctions were shorter and more efficient. So I see the upside there. I do see. You know, the benefit of not sharing a price. I think with some of our luxury homes, which are completely subjective, you know, you might see it at $5 million, I might see it at $10 million, based on, you know, what we want out of that.
Definitely.
So we can still protect it.
Yeah. It's a tough one, that pricing model with auctions, because especially when the market is tightening like it is in certain areas at the moment, and you might meet a seller and they're, you know, 1.5, you know, this is the number we want. We've had other agents tell us, you know, we're on the ball, and you know, deep down, you know, it's probably going to sell 1.3 to 1.4 somewhere. You know, so like in that kind of a situation, like where would you be pitching a range?
Yeah. It's hard to say. I work with a lot of agents who claim that they don't talk price at all. If you were selling my house, I would expect you to give me a range. You know, you put some compelling information in front of me around what the market is. I want a baseline to work off, you know. And if we don't think that that's a reasonable outcome, then why would I go to market if I don't think you can achieve the baseline? So I like a range, you know. If you said, you know, 1.3 to 1.4 or 1.35 to 1.5, somewhere in there, you know, the owner's lofty expectations are still heard at the top end of the range. My expectations around where I know I'm going to get a lot of buoyancy are also heard at the 135 at the bottom end of the range. So I think a range is important, but I would always pitch it a little bit lower, but give them the hope of the upside. That's that great say, without hope the people perish. Like, we want people to be heard. We want them to feel like they've got that hope of that premium, because so many times I've seen properties go vastly above reserve, and I didn't expect it. The owners didn't expect it, and I don't actually think the buyers expected it either. So, but we've got to keep working the baseline.
Yeah.
So when I have that final reserve set meeting, with a seller, I'll often say, what information did you come to the market on? 135 to 15 was where we thought, okay, well, your offers will be coming in around that 125 to 13 range. There's no surprises there at the base. Hopefully, if we can get 3 or 4 of those guys against each other, maybe the chance of something higher is there. But why don't we work your reserve to the bottom end of the range, so at least we've got that locked away unconditionally.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good advice. Yeah, I've been doing this 22 years, and I sort of built my career early on auctions. Then we sort of pulled away a little bit from auctions. Our area was sort of leaning towards more of a sort of an open to offers style scenario, and it was like potential of losing listings because like anyone could sort of sell them.
Yeah.
So you go and sometimes push too hard on an auction and you would lose the listing over it. So it was all about securing the listings. But then they're so easy to sell then, and you sort of get away from the auctions a little bit.
Yeah.
But a lot of my stories that I tell over the years to agents, a lot of my crazy results that I've had have actually been on auction day.
Yeah.
And there's been some really good moments under the hammer there for sellers and for buyers too. Like, it goes both ways. You got to be in it to win it as a buyer. But some properties, like, sellers have just been shocked with the numbers that they've received. And I think for an agent right now, there's a massive opportunity in this market. I think a lot of agents will be nervous about this market, but I believe this is a better market for good agents. Yeah. And an auction is a really good tool. If you can understand the auction process, not only is it going to make you a better negotiator, it's probably going to make your listing presentation stand out a little bit more as well. And you've got a tool that is going to make you sound different, I believe, and you're going to look different in the marketplace. When you like look into a suburb and you see most agents, they're like for sale or best offers buy, and then you see the auction agent. For me, I believe the auction agent might be have a higher skill set. They might have a little bit more care, and they might be able to attract better properties. So I think longevity for an agent, I think being seen as more of an auction agent, I think is a better move for them.
Well, the potential of the profile and the exposure on auction day is high, especially if you're running, good in-room auctions and you invite prospective sellers along, midweek auctions where you get a lot of the neighbours coming along. You can really showcase your skill. Bring the team along. But I think, just to your earlier point, I think you can pivot very quickly too. So you don't want to miss the listing. So if you go in there with an offers over campaign and you're swamped in the first open home, the great part about our legislation is that we can pivot pretty quickly, get the owners to sign off on a change of process, and we can move that, like capitalise on the early energy in the transaction. If I've got 15 groups of people and I've got 6 people wanting to make offers, why wouldn't you do an auction in your office, in the boardroom, or on site, in a week's time? Bring the auction date forward or move it all the way forward.
I like that.
Get that happening, because those people, they don't want to wait. They want to know what the answer is. They don't mind they've got to bid against somebody. As the days go by and the weeks go by, they get less interested. They start to see the faults in the property. So capitalise on it early. It's an incredibly malleable process that we have in here. So we can pivot early and move that.
There's nothing worse for a buyer than a multiple offer situation behind closed doors.
Awful.
Like, I don't like it. It's to trying to like educate the buyer around that as well, and making them, I'm doing this, moving it to an auction to help you.
Yes.
We've done the building and pest for you. It's all good. Like, all you need to know is that you can get the money and just turn up on that day, and you can see your competition. Whoever wants it can have it. I don't have to pick which one I want to go with right now.
I always wondered too, I find it a very fair and equitable process. If you've ever lost at auction, you lost because you didn't have as much money as the other guy, or weren't willing to spend as much, right? So it's not as hard a pill to swallow. But if I win in a multiple offer situation, I'm now nervous. How much more did I pay? Did I pay 50 grand more than the other guy? Did I have to pay that much? There's that kind of uncertainty.
Yeah, definitely. I've bid on a couple of auctions in my time. I've never bought one. I've never been prepared to. It was in a peak market.
Poor auctioneers.
There was like 30 30 bids,
Yeah.
30 bidders.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the auction you don't want to win.
Yeah.
Like someone was paying over on this one.
Yeah.
It still looks like a good deal now because the market's
Correct.
shot up so much. But at the time I was like,
Yeah.
that was huge.
Yeah.
I've sold a house at auction. I sold it under the hammer. But with that property, when I auctioned it, I got a very similar offer very early into the campaign. I got it like straight away, exactly what I wanted. And I was tempted to take the offer. He was working to get it unconditional. It started conditional, but he could have got it unconditional before auction day. But I sort of wanted to feel the process as a seller. Yeah. So I took it to the day, and the same buyer paid a little bit more under the hammer at auction.
Yeah.
So it worked out well. But and I wanted to feel that process. So and I think if the other properties I've sold that I didn't auction, I'm always like, did I just sell it too quick?
Yeah.
Did I sell it too short?
Yeah.
So with the auction, I'm like, I'm comfortable with the result.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I gave it time. I didn't just sell it straight away. I took it to the day. I saw my competition. I'm happy with that.
I think if you cast a wide net with your marketing and you've got 2 or 3 people bidding against each other to buy it, that's a pretty good showing. Yeah. Nice when you got 10, but 2 or 3 is good.
Yeah, you've done some cool auctions in your time.
Yeah, we've done some amazing auctions.
Yeah, would the block be the standout?
I don't know that it was an amazing auction. It was an amazing pass-in, amazing experience, but yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a bit of a bloodbath, that experience for you. But would you go back?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to go back this year or the next. I've had some inquiry, but the issue is I think right now the market is just not there in Melbourne for the high-end luxury homes. The market is tough for that sort of stuff. And I think they need to, I think the block probably needs to reassess how they're doing this and maybe get back to grassroots Australian property investors and mums and dads who want to renovate homes, which is where it started. And it was a lot more interesting.
It'd be nice to see that. It'd be nice to see like actual bidders bidding on a property and feeling the emotion of the buyer, like maybe telling the story a bit more about the buyer leading into the auction day. Yeah. Because that would be a really good energy for the marketplace. But I don't know if that's as saleable, as watchable maybe. We'll see. We'll see where the block takes it. But like marketplaces, it's all about energy, isn't it? It's all about how it feels. It's all about sentiment that's going around. And, like you're dealing with a lot of agents right now. Like, what are they saying? What are they feeling?
I think people are hesitant to put a stake in the ground around values, that's for sure, because they don't, the media noise is prices are dropping. So I think even more right now, you should be leaning into the auction process around that because you're not having to rely on the price. It's more about what the market's willing to pay, even more so. Yeah. If you get a price wrong and people aren't turning up, that's a tough conversation, but you still need to have it. I think a lot of agents are hoping that, spring brings them, an incredible amount of success because I've got people who are banking up, days on market extensively and more stock coming on. So they're just not transacting as fast. So that becomes more hectic. So we're coming off an extraordinary long boom, really post-COVID, last 5 or 6 years. It's been really, really quite simple.
It's been awesome, yeah.
The other thing I'm seeing is, a lot of buyer agents turn up to our auctions now without a lot of work on currently, because you're seeing a return from agents to actually go and service the buyers. Yeah. Because it's quite easy. Yeah. You put your stake in the sand, you put the sign out the front, buyers come to you. Yeah. Now all of a sudden we're having to be proactive around the buyer work. So that's an interesting part
buyers
as well.
agents have always been a bit scared of auctions, haven't they? They're always like, no, I don't want to buy at auction.
Yeah.
They sort of avoid it. But as a buyer's agent, I'd be going to all the auctions if I was a buyer's agent. Because there's opportunity. Like if the seller wants to sell and you're there, the opportunity is there. I've seen people sell for homes that I said to them on the actual auction day, like, we will be able to get you more money after the auction. Yeah. But this is a done deal. This is cash. This is move on with your life.
In the bank 30 days.
I know, it's not exactly what you wanted, but you can resolve all your problems right now if you want to move forward with this. Yeah. And people like peace of mind. They want to move forward,
They like certainty. Yeah. People selling their cars, you can get offer online, it might be $5,000 less than, what you could pay for, do it privately, but you're happy to take it. It's job's done, money's in the bank and certainty, It's, I think there's an opportunity cost around that.
So you're working with agents, obviously calling their auctions, you're sort of advising them and training them a little bit and guiding them?
Yeah, we've done, training and coaching around that for years. I think we're got a pretty good skill level around that. We've seen a lot of campaigns across a lot of states and run some really high end stuff and also some some pretty average stuff as well. So I've learned a lot.
Awesome. Yeah. And you're building a team at Holmes now?
Yeah, we're very I think we're probably we're a boutique independent team. I don't want a lot more than what the guys we've got.
Yep.
We also don't really have the auctions in Queensland to service it. Auction, markets are built. You look at Sunnybank, 15 years ago there was not as many auctions. Now there's a lot. It's huge amounts. But if you look at roughly 200, 250 auctions per weekend, there's a lot of auctioneers running around. There's also a lot of hungry auctioneers running around. So if I put another 5 guys, we've got to feed them somehow. It's not easy. So we like to keep a boutique. I think the quality we offer is high. Good levels of service, and that's important.
No, definitely. No, you're doing some good stuff, mate. And I've enjoyed you calling some of our auctions, and you're really good at what you do. So I'd strongly recommend, if the agents are watching this, you reach out to David and start to build the relationship there. But I appreciate you coming on today, mate.
Absolute pleasure.
Awesome.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you. Cheers.